When my daughter-in-law told me to leave my own home, I smiled instead of crying. I remember that moment very clearly. Not because she raised her voice, not because she said anything cruel, but because my son stood beside her and said nothing. The room was quiet, so quiet that I could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Tick, tick, tick. I had lived in that house for more than 30 years. I had cooked in that kitchen. I had prayed in that corner. I had waited at that door every evening for my son to come home from school, then from college, then from work. And now I was being asked to leave. My daughter-in-law spoke softly. She said it was for peace. She said it would be better for everyone. She said I would understand. I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I raised with trembling hands and endless prayers. He avoided my eyes. In that moment, I understood something very painful. This was not about a room. This was not about space. This was not about comfort. This was about how slowly, quietly, a mother can lose her place in her own child's heart. I smiled because I did not want them to see me break. I nodded because I did not want to argue. And I walked away because I did not know how to stay where I was no longer wanted. But what they did not see was the weight I carried with me when I closed that door. They did not hear the sound my heart made when it cracked. And they never asked how a mother survives the day her own son chooses silence over her tears. I raised my son alone. His father passed away when my boy was just 6 years old. Life changed overnight. The house felt bigger. The nights felt longer. And fear became my quiet companion. I worked wherever I could. Sometimes as a helper. Sometimes stitching clothes. Sometimes cleaning houses where people did not even know my name. But every evening, no matter how tired I was, I came home with a smile. Because my son was watching. He was a gentle child, always holding my hand and crossing the road, always asking if I had eaten. Even at 8 years old, he worried about me. We grew up together. He learned to live without a father. I learned to live without rest. Our home was simple. 2 rooms, a small kitchen, a window that let in just enough light in the mornings. But it was full of warmth. We talked during meals. We laughed at small things. We shared silence without discomfort. When he grew older, people praised him. They said he was polite, responsible, kind. I felt proud, quietly proud. When he told me he wanted to marry, my heart felt both heavy and happy. Heavy because I knew things would change. Happy because he deserved a life of his own. I welcomed my daughter-in-law with open arms. I truly did. I cooked her favorite dishes. I adjusted my habits. I gave them space. I told myself, this is how families grow. She was polite in the beginning, soft-spoken, always smiling. But her smile never reached her eyes. At first, I ignored the small things. The way she corrected me in front of others. The way she sighed when I entered the room. The way conversations stopped when I arrived. I told myself I was imagining it. After all, she was young, new to the house, trying to adjust. I remembered my own early days as a wife. The confusion, the pressure. So I stayed silent. Silence felt like kindness. The changes came slowly. So slowly that I did not notice them at first. Meals were eaten separately. Conversations became shorter. My son started coming home later. When I asked simple questions, the answers felt distant. One evening, I asked him if everything was all right. He said, "Yes, Ma, just tired." But his eyes did not meet mine. My daughter-in-law began setting rules. Small rules. Like where I could keep my things, when I could use the kitchen, who I could invite. She never said them harshly. That was the painful part. She said everything with calm logic. It's just easier this way. It's better for peace. You'll understand. And every time, my son nodded. I started feeling like a guest in my own home. One day, I overheard her speaking to him in their room. She interferes too much. She doesn't understand boundaries. We need our own space. I stood outside, holding a glass of water. My hands shook. I waited for my son to defend me. He did not. Instead, he said, "I know." That word stayed with me for days. I know. I stopped giving advice. Stopped asking questions. Stopped sharing stories. I thought if I made myself smaller, there would be peace. But silence did not save me. It only made me invisible. They began planning without me. Decisions were made. Furniture moved. Routines changed. And I was informed later. Politely. Briefly. Sometimes, my daughter-in-law would say things that sounded reasonable but felt sharp. You should rest more. You don't need to worry. Let us handle it. Each sentence pushed me a little further away. I felt like I was slowly fatting from my own life. At night, I lay awake listening to the house breathe. The walls. The ceiling fan. The distant traffic. I wondered where I went wrong. I wondered when my son stopped seeing me as his home. The day everything broke was ordinary. It was raining lightly. The kind of rain that makes the world quiet. I was folding clothes in my room when my daughter-in-law knocked. She sat down carefully, as if preparing for a difficult conversation. She spoke gently. She said they had been thinking. She said the house felt crowded. She said it would be better if I stayed somewhere else. For some time, she added. I waited for my son to speak. He stood by the window, looking outside. I asked him, "Is this what you want?" He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. He said, "It's just for peace, Ma." Peace. A word that sounded so gentle and hurt so deeply. I nodded. I smiled. I said, "If this makes you happy, I will go." I packed quietly. Only essentials. Clothes. Photographs. Memories folded carefully into a small bag. When I reached the door, my son finally looked at me. He said, "I'll call you." I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to remind him of his childhood, of the nights I stayed awake when he was sick, of the dreams I set aside so he could have his. But I said nothing, because love sometimes chooses silence over pleading. The door closed behind me, and with it, a chapter of my life ended. I moved into a small rented room. It was quiet. Too quiet. No familiar footsteps. No shared meals. No voices calling my name. Days passed. Weeks passed. The phone rarely rang. When it did, the conversations were short. "I'm busy, Ma." "Everything's fine." "I'll visit soon." Soon became never. I learned to live alone. Again. I cooked for one. Prayed for two. Cried in silence. Slowly, something inside me changed. The pain softened. Not disappeared, but settled. I stopped waiting. I focused on myself. On peace that did not depend on anyone else. One evening, a letter arrived. From my son. He wrote about missing me. About things not feeling right. About silence in his own home. I read the letter slowly. I did not rush to reply. Some wounds need time to breathe. When I finally wrote back, I did not accuse. I did not blame. I wrote with love. I told him I forgave him. I told him I wished him peace. I told him I would always be his mother. Because motherhood does not end when children turn away. It only changes shape. Today I live quietly. I smile more gently.